Welcome to Inside American Politics by Skoob. I'm your host, Bradley Teller, and today we're diving into one of the most dramatic and consequential powers in American politics, the power to remove a president from office. Imagine this. You're the most powerful person on earth, leader of the free world, commander-in-chief of the world's mightiest military. And yet, with the right combination of political will and constitutional process, 535 people in Congress can strip you of everything. That's the sword of Damocles that hangs over every American president: impeachment. It's a power so extraordinary that in nearly 250 years of American democracy, only 3 presidents have actually been impeached by the House of Representatives. One resigned before it could happen, and one, Donald Trump, holds the dubious distinction of being impeached not once, but twice. But the story of presidential impeachment isn't just about these headline-grabbing moments. It's about the evolution of American democracy itself, the ongoing tension between executive power and congressional oversight, and how personal scandals can reshape the entire political landscape for generations. Let's start at the beginning. When the Founding Fathers crafted the Constitution, they faced a crucial question. How do you remove a president who abuses power without making the office so weak that it becomes ineffective? Their solution was impeachment, a deliberately high bar that requires not just political disagreement, but what they called high crimes and misdemeanors. Now here's where it gets interesting. They never clearly defined what that means. Was it only for criminal acts? Could policy disagreements qualify? This ambiguity would haunt American politics for centuries. James Madison and his fellow framers envisioned impeachment primarily as a political tool, a safety valve for democracy. But they made it intentionally difficult. The House must vote to impeach, which is essentially an indictment. Then the Senate conducts a trial, requiring a 2/3 supermajority to convict and remove the president. It's democracy's nuclear option, meant to be used only in the gravest circumstances. Throughout history, aside from presidents, the House has impeached 14 other federal officials, including a cabinet secretary, a senator, and 12 judges. The results? 7 convictions, 6 acquittals or resignations. Even from the beginning, politics played a role, just as Alexander Hamilton predicted it would. Our story really begins in 1841 with a man who never expected to be president, John Tyler. When William Henry Harrison died just 31 days into his presidency, Tyler faced an unprecedented situation. The Constitution was unclear about succession. Was he truly president, or just acting president? Tyler made a bold declaration that would echo through history. I am the president. Not acting president, not caretaker, president. This wasn't just about titles, it was about power. The Whig Party that had supported him expected Tyler to be their puppet, carrying out Harrison's agenda. Instead, Tyler asserted his independence in dramatic fashion. He became the first president to have a cabinet nominee rejected by the Senate, the first to veto legislation based on policy rather than constitutional grounds, and subsequently, the first to have his veto overridden. His own party turned on him with a vengeance. The result? Tyler faced the first serious threat of impeachment in American history. The House of Representatives debated removing him, but ultimately couldn't secure a majority vote. Why? Because Tyler hadn't committed any crimes. He had simply pursued policies his party disagreed with. This set a crucial precedent. Political disagreement alone wouldn't be enough for impeachment. Tyler finished his term but was politically isolated, failing to get nominated by either major party in 1844. He left the presidency in 1845 without seeking re-election and, in a final twist of irony, later served in the Confederate Congress. Tyler's near impeachment established that being an ineffective or unpopular president wasn't an impeachable offense. It would take something far more serious to cross that constitutional line. Fast forward to 1868, and we encounter the first actual presidential impeachment in American history. Andrew Johnson, the 17th president, was a man caught between two worlds and trusted by neither. Johnson had ascended to the presidency after Lincoln's assassination, inheriting the monumental task of Reconstruction. But Johnson's approach was radically different from what the radical Republicans in Congress wanted. Where they sought harsh measures against the defeated South and protection for freed slaves, Johnson favored a lenient approach that many saw as betraying the very principles the Civil War had been fought to establish. The tension simmered for years until it exploded in 1868. Johnson made a fateful decision. He fired Edwin Stanton, the Secretary of War, and a key ally of the radical Republicans. This wasn't just a personnel change. It was a direct violation of the Tenure of Office Act, which required Senate approval to dismiss cabinet officials. Congressman Thaddeus Stevens, leader of the Committee on Reconstruction, seized the moment. The House voted overwhelmingly, 126 to 47, to impeach Johnson. The articles of impeachment included not just the Tenure of Office Act violation, but also allegations that Johnson had vilified Congress through his political speeches. What followed was a 7-week Senate trial that gripped the nation. When the votes were counted, Johnson survived by the narrowest possible margin, just 1 vote. Had a single senator changed his mind, American history would have been forever altered. Johnson's impeachment wasn't really about the Tenure of Office Act, which was arguably unconstitutional anyway. According to historian John Meacham, it was another front in the ongoing North-South struggle, the Civil War fought by other means. Johnson's impeachment served as a stark reminder that in the aftermath of national trauma, political wounds can remain raw for generations. Richard Nixon presents one of the most fascinating what-if scenarios in impeachment history, because he's the only president who resigned before the process could be completed. Nixon had actually faced impeachment threats as early as 1972 over his conduct during the Vietnam War. But it was Watergate, a third-rate burglary that morphed into a constitutional crisis, that ultimately brought him down. Here's what makes Nixon's case so unique. Law enforcement and judiciary bodies had evidence of his criminal conduct a full 8 months before he left office. But Nixon was a master of political survival. He strategically obstructed access to crucial information while demanding that his opponents provide incontrovertible evidence of his direct involvement. Nixon nearly succeeded in derailing the impeachment process entirely. His downfall came from an unexpected source, his own obsession with recording everything. Those tapes, which he created himself, became the smoking gun that ended his presidency. In 1974, the House Judiciary Committee recommended Nixon's impeachment in a bipartisan vote. Faced with certain impeachment and likely conviction, Nixon became the first and only president to resign from office on August 9, 1974. The United States was fortunate, as our document notes, that a contingent of bipartisan officials was willing to risk their political careers to pursue the truth. They placed their reverence for the Constitution above party allegiance or personal gain. This moment represents one of the high water marks of American institutional integrity. If Johnson's impeachment was about the Civil War's aftermath and Nixon's was about abuse of power, Bill Clinton's impeachment was about something far more personal and far more complicated. The Clinton saga began with revelations in January 1998 about his relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. What started as a personal scandal quickly became a constitutional crisis when Clinton was investigated for perjury and witness tampering. Here's where the story gets fascinating from a political strategy perspective. Clinton, deeply concerned about public reaction, consulted his political advisor Dick Morris. Morris conducted an overnight poll that revealed a crucial insight. Americans might forgive adultery, but they wouldn't forgive legal infractions like perjury or obstruction of justice. This polling data essentially drove Clinton into his impeachment trap. Unlike Johnson's impeachment, which grappled with the Civil War's aftermath, or Nixon's situation, which emerged from overwhelming abuse of authority, Clinton's predicament initially seemed more suited to tabloid headlines than constitutional law. But appearances were deceiving. Clinton's impeachment possessed immense significance because it illuminated and exacerbated the partisan discord that was beginning to define American politics. The framers, including Madison, had envisioned impeachment as a political maneuver, and Clinton's case proved that vision, while probing whether a president's private missteps, coupled with cover-ups, constituted a credible threat to the Republic. Tom DeLay, the Republican Majority Whip from Texas, even labeled his impeachment efforts the campaign. Clinton perceived it similarly, each faction attempting to convince the American public that the other side was infringing on the constitutional framework. Unlike Nixon, who resigned in disgrace, Clinton chose a different path. He orchestrated a strategic campaign aimed at both discrediting his accusers and saving his presidency. This effort ultimately paid off when the Senate chose not to convict him on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. Clinton's impeachment story has a twist that reads like political satire. While Clinton survived his impeachment, his accusers faced their own spectacular downfalls. The three men leading House Republicans during Clinton's impeachment later faced public shame, removal from their positions, and even imprisonment due to their own indiscretions and sexual offenses. For many Americans, this created a perception that Clinton's political adversaries were guilty of an even greater sin than his: hypocrisy. The impeachment saga left long-lasting scars on the American political scene and influenced careers for years to come. Clinton's impeachment also had profound electoral consequences. He was notably the first impeached president who had actually been elected to the office. Both Tyler and Johnson had inherited the presidency. This blemish proved difficult for his vice president, Al Gore, to overcome in the extremely close 2000 presidential election. Despite Gore's campaign promise to continue the trajectory of peace and prosperity from Clinton's administration, he mostly avoided mentioning Clinton's name. Meanwhile, George W. Bush effectively campaigned on a platform promising to restore honor and dignity to the Oval Office, a message that resonated with voters weary of scandal. The Clinton impeachment's electoral impact extended even further. In 2016, a candidate with a well-publicized history of inappropriate conduct was able to deflect allegations by highlighting Bill Clinton's record. Just as Nixon's departure paved the way for a Democrat to claim the presidency in 1976, Clinton's impeachment directly contributed to Republican victories in 2000 and 2016. Which brings us to Donald Trump, the president who shattered every impeachment precedent by becoming the only president in American history to be impeached twice. Trump's first impeachment in 2019 centered on that now infamous phone call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. During the call, Trump urged Zelensky to investigate Joe Biden and his son Hunter, this while U.S. military aid to Ukraine, already approved by Congress, was being withheld. Democrats viewed this as textbook abuse of power, leveraging foreign policy for personal political gain. Following investigations led by the House Intelligence and Judiciary Committees, the House voted on December 18, 2019, to impeach Trump on two articles: abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. The Senate trial in early 2020 resulted in Trump's acquittal, but it featured one historic moment. Senator Mitt Romney became the first senator in history to vote to convict a president of his own party, making it the most bipartisan conviction vote in any presidential impeachment trial. Trump used his acquittal as a rallying point in his 2020 re-election campaign. But just over a year later, he would face impeachment again, this time for something unprecedented in American history. The second impeachment came in the aftermath of January 6, 2021, when a violent mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol as Congress met to certify the 2020 presidential election results. The attack resulted in deaths, injuries, and a temporary halt to the democratic process itself, something that had never happened in American history. In the days leading up to the attack, Trump had repeatedly made false claims about election fraud and encouraged his supporters to fight like hell. The House moved with unprecedented speed, voting on January 13, 2021, to impeach Trump for incitement of insurrection. This second impeachment was historic for multiple reasons. It made Trump the only twice impeached president, and 10 Republican House members broke with their party to support the resolution, the most bipartisan presidential impeachment in history. The Senate trial took place after Trump had left office, raising constitutional debates about whether a former president could even be tried. On February 13, 2021, the Senate acquitted Trump again, though 57 senators, including 7 Republicans, voted to convict, falling short of the required two-thirds majority. Trump's impeachments highlighted something troubling about modern America. the highly partisan nature of contemporary impeachment proceedings. Unlike the Watergate era, when bipartisan consensus emerged around the process, Trump's impeachments were sharply divided along party lines. This reflects a broader crisis in American democracy. The American populace is more politically splintered today than during the eras following Nixon's resignation and Clinton's impeachment trial. Citizens readily demonize each other, retreating into partisan camps at the first sign of conflict. Research shows that citizens born after major political scandals like Watergate exhibit lower trust levels in government compared to those born before. A similar trend is observable in Americans who reached adulthood before versus after Clinton's impeachment in 1999. Even more concerning is the erosion of confidence in information itself. The allegiance of a news source often weighs more in voters' minds than the veracity of the evidence presented. Defenders and adversaries of both Nixon, Clinton, and Trump believed staunchly in their righteousness, viewing their counterparts not just as misguided, but as morally corrupt. This has led to a decline in civil discourse and a reluctance to pursue bipartisan solutions, a situation unprecedented since the periods leading up to the Civil War. Though presidential impeachments aren't solely responsible for recent political schisms, it's difficult to argue that Americans, living in their protracted aftermath, enjoy the constitutional promise of domestic tranquility. As we wrap up the impeachment chronicles, we're left wondering, has impeachment, meant to protect democracy, become part of its challenge? The founders saw it as a safeguard rooted in shared values, but today, that foundation feels fragile. Yet despite political storms, the process endures, reminding us that no one, not even the president, is above the law. What happens next could shape the future of American democracy itself. Curious about the full story behind these moments that tested the nation? Download the Skoob app now to unlock the complete impeachment chronicles and dive deeper into this gripping saga. Thanks for listening. Remember, democracy isn't a spectator sport. Stay engaged.